Hi, everybody. This is James Ledoux, and this is a supplemental interview for my HypnoThoughts 2020 talk. I'm joined today by hypnotist Lori Hammond. Hey, Lori. A little bit about how we know each other from online. We are both members of MMHA Engage with Mike Mandel. That was my first hypnosis instructor. Full disclosure, I've taken a few of Lori's classes, the How to Make Great Video course on Facebook, as well as Weight Loss Without Willpower from trancypants.com. So Lori is not only a hypnotist, a speaker at HypnoThoughts Live and other hypnosis conferences, a course creator, as well as a practitioner. And you've used hypnosis in your own life to make some great changes. So I thought today we could talk a little bit about instructional design, not necessarily digging into the academic side of it, but more of the practical side, how you approach course creation in your life and what you've done with it so far.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me here, James. I am absolutely honored. It's so good to see you and connect with you again.
Yeah, likewise. So how did you get into, I know a little bit about your backstory, but not everybody watching might know this, but I know that you became a hypnotist out of self-interest, correct? And
Yes.
started approaching it that way and sort of started absorbing all of that material. But at some point you flipped from absorbing material and being a practitioner to now teaching others how to improve their hypnosis and improve their lives, both from a, delivering content to trainers, or hypnotists, but also to I guess what did you call them, clients or customers? How would you?
Yeah, it's clients works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get into course creation?
Yes, several years ago, so I used to be a hairstylist.
Right.
And at one point I took on a second job because I wanted to save up some money for a project that I wanted to complete. And I'm working two jobs and I'm making great money. And I was also listening to podcasts at the time. I had read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And I just started asking myself some empowering questions. And I started saying, okay, how can I make great money, but not have to be working 60 hours a week? Or how can I stop trading dollars for hours where
wow.
I don't have to be behind the chair working on a client to be making an income? And so my wheels started spinning. And I think when we ask ourselves those empowering questions, it tunes the reticular activating system of the brain to start noticing things, noticing answers and ideas and possibilities in our environment that we may have missed. So this was all happening about the time that I started learning hypnosis. And I did that to help me manage my weight. I had been a yo-yo dieter my whole life.
Okay.
And I went and saw a couple of hypnotists and I didn't really like them and I didn't feel like it was working for me. So I thought, well, I'm just going to learn how to do this myself. And because I love podcasts, I had listened to Mike and Chris's MMHA podcast, their brain software, I think it's called. And so because I was familiar with Mike, I knew, like, and trusted him, I made the really happy decision. I'm so grateful that I chose to train with him first. And the rest is history. It was so life-changing for me. The side effect that was unexpected was it just obliterated a lifelong of depression for me. And I thought, yeah. And so I started thinking, what if, it seems so scary to start using these tools when you've learned them. But I thought, what if I use this to start supplementing my income and creating an income where I don't have to be in front of, behind the chair at the salon working on someone's hair to make money. Right. And I immediately started using hypnosis over Zoom. As soon as I started using hypnosis, I used Zoom and have had amazing success. And then I thought, okay, so, this is still like a trading dollars for hours kind of scenario. And so I thought, okay, how can I create programs based on the success that I've had with myself and the success that I've had with my client? And I looked at programs that I've participated in the past and taken what I enjoyed from them. Mike's was a great example. I learned a lot from him I love the way he breaks his videos up into small digestible pieces.
Yes.
And so I've emulated a lot of what I learned from him.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. And as someone who's sort of been in the class with you at HypnoThoughts Live and observed you there, and then also watching your courses, it's interesting because you you're phenomenal at incorporating things you learn and bringing them right to the thing. So the example that comes to mind is the metaphor from James Hazelrig about the elephant with the stick. And I'd heard that live at HypnoThoughts, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good. And then when I was watching one of your courses, that was one of your lessons, which was, how to think about, giving your unconscious mind a job, so to speak, that serves you rather than disserves you. So it was amazing to see that little example of you taking a pearl of wisdom and then passing that along. And I've noticed you did that as well with the Jacqueline's work. You're friends with Freddie and Anthony. So I've seen those elements come in and you fully credit them, but it's just amazing how you're able to absorb content and then use it to your own purpose.
That means a lot to me because that's something I've really worked on with intention. I used to read a book or listen to content, take a training, and I felt like so much of it slipped through the cracks. And I actually learned as a hairstylist that one of the best ways to internalize a new teaching is to teach it to someone else. So even as a hairstylist, when I would learn new techniques, I was a trainer and I had people apprenticing underneath me and I would teach them the techniques, and all of a sudden these things would click into place for me. So that's something I've really worked on. And especially, James Hazelrig's elephant metaphor, I don't consider myself a great storyteller. And so I try to overcome those limiting beliefs that I have about myself. And I thought, okay, this story was really cool. I can tell that one. And so just starting to get out of my comfort zone and do stuff before I feel like I'm ready and do stuff before I feel like I've necessarily mastered the content helps me so much.
Yeah, and it really comes across because one of the things I could note, and this is be something I would say most people should strive for, is you're very authentic when you're teaching. And you may even share something like you did just there, where it's like, okay, you're not trying to say, I'm perfect and this is exactly how you should do it. But you're saying, here's what I did, here's what worked for me, here's how I approach it. And it's very relatable. And I think people love that about you.
Thank you. That means so much. I think that people, you and I have learned from Mike that one of the most important indicators of success with a client or, let's say an audience, anyone who's listening to you, is that you have rapport with them, that they know, like, and trust you.
Right.
And I think we can try to come off being perfect and scripted and just right. And sometimes that almost creates a barrier where they think, oh, I could never be as great as they are. So I like to show my humanity and let people realize I'm just a real person. And I really think that ultimately builds rapport where they then know, like, and trust me because they realize I'm not some special flower that's got any skills that they can't cultivate themselves.
Well, I think you are special, but I appreciate you saying that. But one of the things, a little niche that you've carved out for yourself is, I would almost call it a micro course, but like the making great content or making great videos. It's a challenge that everyone has. Yeah. Not everyone, or most people are not comfortable necessarily talking on camera unless you do it a lot. And it seems like a scary thing. And you broke that down in such a way that it made it approachable. You had a challenge that went along with it, and then a way for people to opt into a small community to kind of continue the learning. So it's really sort of a microcosm of how you approach courses. But when you're thinking of a new course, what process do you go through?
I've iterated over time. So when I did my very first course that I did was actually an anti-anxiety course. You may not know that because I didn't sell a single one. And I went through and I plotted and I planned exactly what I wanted in there. And I took all this time to script the videos and I set up a little teleprompter and I spent days and days recording and then editing, weeks then editing and getting everything up. And, I had this, if you build it, they will come mentality. And I put it up, I told people about it, but I didn't really know how to talk about it. And I didn't sell any. A few people, I gave it to them for free just to get their feedback and they loved it. But I spent so much time, and what I've learned, James, is that over time, it's more important just to speak passionately about something that really lights you up. So if I get an idea to make a video or something, and I do it right in the spur of the moment, even if I'm sitting in my car, it's going to be so much more engaging than if it's scripted out and I have everything just right. So that first course that I created, I overthought so much, and I created it before I knew if I could sell it. And so that would be, that was a learning experience for me.
Interesting. And so how have you changed or adapted that process? It's just more impromptu and sort of going from that perspective?
So what I've learned to do, a lot of it is about getting in the right state when I start. So rather than, I was really stressing myself out and feeling this, this trying, efforting kind of energy. And so if I kind of get into a playful state, and Mike Mandela is so great at teaching different ways to change your state. A lot of it is just shifting your body language and your breathing. Sometimes I'll turn on, my theme song that makes me feel really empowered and motivated. And I'll think about the end goal. This is an amazing technique to just think, okay, what is the main point that I want to teach people? And then you can break that up into subpoints.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most helpful things that I have done, I learned from Amy Porterfield, who teaches course creation, and she teaches a sticky note technique. And I would imagine you could Google this and find a podcast about it. But so you would take that big point, what's the main idea that I want to convey, and then think about the topics that go underneath that, and then just brainstorm. I wonder if I can show you on my wall. I've done this recently, and you can see my sticky notes right over here.
That's the second time sticky notes have come up today.
I love it. Yeah. It's fun because it's really tactile, and I have lots of different colors. And so you just brainstorm, and you don't edit, you don't veto, you just let yourself dream big and just being able to categorize things. For me, it organizes it in my head. And once it's a little bit more organized, it really helps. And then once it comes down to, I deliver my courses in little videos. You can deliver it in other ways. But for me, once I have the topics, I like to just break my videos up into 3 points where it's like, what's the main idea? What's the promise of what I'm going to deliver them? And then what's one main point? I think when you really try to overwhelm people and inundate them with information, it ends up getting lost. The more simple you keep it, the more effective.
That's a great idea. And the thing I like about that as well is, there are courses out there that I've taken, and I learned a lot from them, but they're basically a camera just set up in a training room, and they just record it live, which is great, right? Capture everything you do, and you can make things out of it. But if something changes either in your philosophy or your approach, or you have to correct something, it'd be very hard to do, right? But when you break it up into those modules, not only is it more absorbable, it's easier to create one little module. And then later, if you need to, you can update it along the way, versus having to try to dress exactly the same and get the lighting the same and, pop it into the middle of a presentation.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Interesting. So you'd start with the visual thinking, sort of the brainstorm approach. Do you then take it into a outline of each of those things you're talking about?
Yeah, it really just depends. I love my outlines, and I just do that all in Google Docs. So I'll break it up into subheadings. And the cool thing is with the sticky notes, you can go over then and kind of rearrange things, realize that some things you can throw away. Yes. I think it's Stephen King that has a quote about killing your darlings. He talks about his writing process, and he gets to the end and then he has to omit. I think that the value that you deliver people has as much to do with what you leave out as it does to what you keep in. So rather than trying to make myself look cool and really knowledgeable, I try to think, how can I make this simple and understandable and actionable so people actually know how to move forward? So yes, that outline is really helpful. And sometimes, like the micro course that you created, that you mentioned, that I did with the Making Great video, that was something where I challenged myself before I felt ready. I thought, sometimes I get these ideas and then I just sit on it and I don't do anything. So I just put a thing up on Facebook and said, hey, if I did a 3-day video challenge that helped you feel comfortable in front of a camera, would you be interested? And people, I think something like 70 people signed up. And that was something where every day I made a short 10-minute video that morning, just live. And it was phenomenally successful. People got more out of that. There are people now that have been making video for several months and are getting better and better just from that little 3-day experiment. So
yeah, that was a really cool one.
yeah, I think it's better to get it out there and do it imperfectly than to get it just right and sit on it for weeks, months, years, forever.
Yeah, and I suppose you could almost use the approach where it's almost like a tiny bet. You're going to invest this amount of time in this topic, something you care about. And if people really respond, you could decide later to follow it up with a larger, more elaborate course, or just move on to something that's complementary or supplemental. So it's a great approach. And also, even though it was daunting and it was hard, developing a course over 3 days that has 3 main things with points and subpoints and supporting calls to action, it's very approachable. Even though it's difficult, it's still approachable.
Yeah, it was. And people really loved it. It ended up being a really positive experience for me. It was so fun to scroll through. I created a private group where people could make their short little videos. And man, I got so sucked in watching the videos. I was spending hours a day and people were so excited, but it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, that was great. And so talk a little bit about the tools that you use aside from we've talked a little bit about video, which is a key component to your courses, but what else do you use in terms of tools?
So to host my programs, I initially used Podia, and I was really happy with their customer service. They were so helpful. It was a really clean design, but I had so many problems with people getting logged in. Every single day I was putting out fires and trying to figure out how to get things right. So I think that was almost 2 years ago. So that they've probably developed that out more. But I switched over to Kajabi, and it was the smartest thing I've ever done. I absolutely love it. Chris Thompson actually had a chat with me and walked me through it. So I host all of my programs on Kajabi. My website is hosted on Kajabi, and all my email is run through them. So it's a one-stop shop. And that's my favorite tool. And then, as far as the videos, I just swung my camera around and you could see I have a little ring light. This is by Newar, I think, Newarr or something like that. And it's one of the smartest investments I ever made. I have a little webcam on an arm right here.
Yep.
What am I forgetting? What other?
Do you use lavaliers?
I have used the lavalier mic in the past, and it seems glitchy. Sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't. So this is what I have in my hand right now. I usually have this on an arm that's being held, but this is an Audio-Technica. I don't think they make this model anymore, but the Audio-Technicas are good. The Yetis are really great mics. Right. And it does make a difference to have a quality microphone.
Yeah, I think so. I'm using a Rode Podcaster, but like this mic is, I think 8 years old. It wasn't cheap, but it's been very durable. And I probably haven't used it near as much as you've used yours. But I think a key takeaway for people is don't let the tools get in the way of the thing. You can start with what you have. So if you have a smartphone, you could start with a smartphone. I'm using a HD webcam that's in a Mac that's more than 5 years old, and the video's passable. Earlier, I talked with Chris Thompson that you mentioned. He was using his cell phone off in a cab, and the video might not be as high quality as yours was, but it was perfectly fine. So I think starting with what you have would be the best idea. And then, looking towards the future, thinking long-term, perhaps using a tool like Kajabi, or I know Jason Lynette uses custom WordPress themes, but he started developing that before there was something like Kajabi, I think. So I guess it depends, but I was part of the Podia as well, and I remember that platform. And then when you made the transition, now I don't know, do you use the Kajabi feature where people can download or watch your courses on the phone?
Yes, I think by default, if you download the Kajabi app, you can access any program through that.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's not something I advertise very often, but yeah.
That's pretty cool. And that's the beauty, what Chris was mentioning, what you sort of alluded to, is that outsourcing that to Kajabi and let them worry about all of that lets you focus on the content, lets you focus on the marketing and new content, new materials. So Let me ask you a different question. What courses have you taken personally that had a big impact on your life? You mentioned Mike Mandel's Architecture of Hypnosis. Um, but are there other courses you've taken outside the hypnosis world that informed how you approach course creation?
Yes, offhand, the one that stands out to me most is Amy Porterfield's Digital Course Academy.
Hmm.
And that's one where I've followed Amy Porterfield for several years. She has an amazing podcast. She's a person that I know, like, and trust. I know that she delivers massive value. And so I invested $3,000 in her product,
Wow.
even though that was a steep price tag. I already trusted her. I knew that I would get value. And it was something that I felt really good about doing because she had been that example for me. So
Yeah.
offhand, I can't think of, I know there are other programs and
Sure.
courses that I've purchased, but that's the one that has been the most, that stands out the most.
That's amazing. And then what's your take on sort of what's coming up next for you? Are there any exciting, you mentioned that course that was on the wall. Are there any exciting courses in the works that you can talk about yet? Or are they sort of?
Yeah. So my mind is always teeming with ideas, and I tell people, capture your ideas. So I have a file in my phone where I'll write down ideas that I have, because I think it's James Allen that says your brain is made for generating ideas, not storing ideas.
Yes. Yes. David
And
Allen, Getting Things Done.
yes. So my big thing right now is the imposter syndrome thing. I have so many people. In fact, just today, this woman said, I really struggle with imposter syndrome. I'm a certified hypnotist, but I haven't taken action. And so I have a podcast that I started, and I interview successful hypnotists who have overcome what I call their own imposter monster and take action anyway. So I think the next thing on my agenda is to create a course. And I've played around with this a little bit. I did a quick training on imposter syndrome, and people absolutely loved it. It was incredibly well received, and the results were incredible. People who've been waiting to take action, finally starting to move forward in their business or other goals. So the next thing that I'm looking at, and that's actually what's on my wall, is, okay, what is this going to look like? How can I get it in the hands of as many people as possible? How can I make sure that it's effective and that it's actually bringing people, from point A to point B and getting them where they want to be?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm sure I'll be definitely interested in taking that, because I have noticed, especially, I'm sure it's the same in all areas, but I tend to just purchase courses and I watch them, and then maybe I take action, maybe I don't. But if I did not even half, if I did 10% of what's in all the courses I've read, I'd be much further ahead, So I think that's great advice. And really commendable to think about that. So I'm sure the imposter syndrome is something people will look forward to. And then you're doing a talk this year at HypnoThoughts Live, is that right?
Yes, I'm actually doing a 4-hour presentation about my weight loss program.
Okay.
So that's my main program that I sell right now. What I specialize in is weight loss. And that's because that's what brought me to hypnosis. And my heart just goes out to people that struggle with their weight, because I know what it's like to feel like it's almost like a sense of being in bondage to food and thoughts about food. So I have a heart for helping people with that. So I'm presenting, my intention is to give people everything they need to get a handle on their own weight, as well as help their weight loss clients with the tools that I'll be sharing at HypnoThoughts this year.
Oh, that'll be great. And you're going in person. I'm going to be recording a talk about instructional design and sending it in. But you mentioned HypnoThoughts. We're talking about hypnosis. There will be a lot of people watching this who are hypnotists. So let's, maybe we don't have to go too deep, but let's talk a little bit about the hypnotic principles you embed in your courses to make them more engaging, more exciting, more satisfying, more effective.
Yeah, so I use so much. Hypnosis it's so far reaching and impacts every area of life. And at one point, after I'd created that anxiety program and thought, okay, it's not enough to be good at hypnosis. And I geek out, and I'm always studying and learning and continuing to enlarge my schema, as Mike Mandel would say. I realized, okay, I am going to have to devote just as much time to learning marketing as I am to learning hypnosis. And I fought that a little bit and I resisted it. And when I finally said, I'm just going to do it, I'm going to accept that this is how it is, it was really fun because I realized so much of it just goes hand in hand. And if Mike Mandel has those language cards, and I believe there's a salad card app that you can download on your phone, and it's just NLP language patterns. And I would take one a day. I think it was James Tripp that told me about this. He said he would just get one language pattern a day and use that in sentences. And what I found is before long, I would just begin speaking in these language patterns, and they're so persuasive. And of course, I'm going to struggle to have an example. One is like a tag question where you say, and you would love to get a handle on your own weight, wouldn't you? And just adding that "wouldn't you" creates this on the inside, it's like they say, yes, I would. And so they're agreeing with you. And that's
more
a way
of a conversation than a lecture.
Right. Yes. And one of the biggest things that I have used to keep people engaged with my content is simply this. Again, Mike tells a story of, I think he was on a plane with someone and he was tired. He didn't really feel like talking, and that he sat down and he could immediately tell that this man was going to talk the whole flight. And he went ahead and just said he pretended like that man was the most interesting person in the world. And he ended up enjoying the conversation. At the end of the conversation, the man said, "You are such an interesting person." And so I think that
I think we're losing the audio a bit.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there you go. It's back.
Okay, it's back.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
So, I think that when you model the emotion that you want the listener to have, it makes a massive difference. So when I'm recording my videos, when I first started recording video, I did a practice run, and I'm making the video and my face looks like this and my voice is completely monotone and I'm using hand gestures, and I thought I was being really interesting, and I thought, okay, something needs to change. So I actually listened to an audiobook where the narrator had this melodic voice, and her voice would go up and then it would go back down, and it was very engaging. And I actually listened to that audiobook and spoke along with her, and my voice went up when her voice went up, and it went down when hers went down, and it taught me to speak in a more engaging way. So when I'm on camera, when I'm creating my courses, or when I'm doing I do a lot of group sessions where I'll do group hypnosis sessions.
Yes.
I will light myself up in a way that I want them to light up as they watch. Because if you're just speaking to someone and you're low energy and you're looking off into space, there's nothing that sucks the viewer in. And so I think you should model what it is that you want them to experience.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And I would say that the great presenters, the great speakers, the great trainers use their physicality, they use their tonality. And then what you mentioned was bringing yourself to a state and projecting the state to the viewer. And it could be an emotion, it could be a quality. It's really amazing doing that. And then I noticed you also use lots of stories in your courses, which is a very engaging way to share content and lessons learned, and even future pace people. And you could even embed commands or thoughts or ideas within those, using the whole metaphors and nested loops and so on. Is that something you intentionally do, or is it a byproduct of just all of the training?
I think it's a little bit of both. When I teach my video course, I'll tell them never start your video by saying, "I'm Lori Hammond and I'm a professional hypnotist," because you only have 8 seconds to capture their attention. So I always try to start my videos with a question or a story, because people are programmed to lean in for both questions or stories. So that is a really valuable tool that I've incorporated in. It's kind of just morphed over time. I think, that's another reason it's so important to just take action and get started instead of waiting till it's just right, because you're always going to learn as you go. And I know for people like myself who tend to be perfectionists and want to get it right the first time, it's frustrating to hear that, but you will be so much further ahead in 6 months if you start now than if you try to get everything perfect and start in 6 months.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I should have started this. I'll have to go back and edit in a question. Would you like to make more effective and exciting courses? Or how about, how much money could you make if you used hypnotic principles in your course creation?
I love that. Yes. And in this context, it's a little different, but
Sure.
when I put little Facebook lives up, I do my best to always start with some kind of a hook instead of just the standard. It's good to stand out from the rest of the crowd.
Definitely. Well, this has been really exciting. I want to thank you for all of your time today and sharing your wisdoms. I'm going to gather some of the nuggets that I can and slide them into the presentation that I do for HypnoThoughts Live. And anyone who's watching, I would encourage you to go see Lori's website, trancypants.com, and look for her course if it's something that interests you, or perhaps something the Weight Loss Without Willpower. I can vouch for the effectiveness of that course. It's really awesome. And if you're someone who's struggling with video, I'd recommend checking out her Facebook course, Make Great Video. Is that what it's called?
Make Great Video Now, yes. And then I do a 3-day challenge now and then. I'll probably be doing another one again sometime soon.
Okay, so they should follow you on Facebook at Lori Hammond?
Yes.
Excellent. And then any other courses you'd like to mention or things you'd like to share? Something I should have thought about asking you but forgot to?
No, that's perfect. That pretty much covers it. The best way to connect with me, honestly, the best way to connect with me is through Facebook. And I'm really active there. That's where I talk about what I'm doing. And I love hearing from people. I love answering questions and talking about all things hypnosis. So reach out anytime. I am here for you.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, James.
Thanks. Let me find the pause button. And it's been great talking with you.